Hello Horror Hounds, I know it's been over a month, about 9 or 10 videos since I talked about Phantasm IV, but come on guys, this is the Phantasm series. It's de rigueur to wait an inordinately long amount of time for the next instalment and then wonder whether it was really worth it. This is Phantasm IV, Oblivion. I'm going to put my cards on the table straight away and say that I love Phantasm IV. But I know an awful lot of people hate it, and I understand why. I get it. If I'm looking at this objectively, it's barely even a movie. It's kind of like 2, maybe 3 loose strands propped up by excised footage from the original movie that's been found and reincorporated into this. Yet, as he managed to achieve with the first movie, Don Coscarelli creates a tension and a tone, just a vibe that is Phantasm. We're back really in the realm of art house sensibility with a couple of fucking excellent stunts, it must be said, for the action side of things as well. I'm much more comfortable when my Phantasm is that side of the line. I just prefer it. And the vibe in Phantasm IV, for me, I lap it up. I'm a sucker for it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is a great movie, but am I glad it exists? Hell yes. For all the time we tread water with A. Michael Baldwin wandering around Death Valley, being followed by a camera, staring meaningfully into the middle distance, with the camera looking at the rising and the setting sun, we also get segments like Jebediah Morning Sights, stuff that I love. It seems like it's giving us answers. Finally, it's the fourth one. We're getting some real meaty answers in a flashback sequence where Mike and Jodie travel back in time to the Civil War era and meet, or see at least, the tall man as a human, Jebediah Morningside, with his steampunk dimension gate. It affords Angus Scrimm the opportunity to truly act against the character of the tall man, briefly, but as a kindly southern gentleman. But it gives him a chance to, show us his chops, see what else he can do other than the glorious eyebrow raising and purposeful walking of the tall man. And that section gives us a surprise return of the fortune teller from the first movie as well. And you start to think that things are sort of coalescing around. This is some vital piece of information, the birth of the tall man and how it came to be. This is also, bear in mind, this is the movie that gives us breast spheres, so I don't want to dig too deeply into something that the movie then doesn't really explore ever again. Because this movie is such a hodgepodge of storylines and bits, skits, unformed, unfinished ideas, like the potential alternate reality or future timeline of the empty city that Jodie takes Mike through, where he says that they can't stay long because there's a risk of infection. That just gives me the sense that this disease that the tall man is as portrayed as has taken over here. I really get Prince of Darkness vibes from that section, and the eerie setting of empty Las Vegas streets, way before Danny Boyle did it with the streets in London at the opening of 28 Days Later. But it's a sort of one and done. It's a throwaway idea, explored later, yes, in part 5, but it's just thrown into the mix. It's like alphabeti spaghetti, and you throw enough of it out there and occasionally you can see a word. Sometimes they're zombie state troopers, because we also spend some time with Reggie, who's kind of sidelined in this one, but that's okay. He gets his little skit, he gets his little sketch, his bit to do with the state trooper and the stunts there. Shout out to stuntman Bob Ivy, who does the amazing burn stunt of the car fully engulfed in flames, with him in it, getting out of the car as the zombie trooper, completely engulfed in flames himself, exiting the car. Just, I love proper stunts. And for all that wacko stuff with Reggie that carries on the tones of part 2 and 3, with him as the unlikely action hero, we do go back to Mike and the mournfulness of his sections, the melancholy of him wandering around Death Valley on his own. Yeah, it's cheap. Yeah, it's easy to shoot. Yeah, it uses up time. But at the same time, there's something almost intangible about seeing a character age throughout these movies that you first saw as a young boy in the first movie, and now the cares of the world are on him and he's a man, and incorporating the alternate scenes, alternate endings, alternate takes from the first movie, so you can see him placed up against images of him as a boy. You can see I don't want to call them the ravages of time on his face, because he don't look that old, but dude, I know whereof I speak. The evidence of time having passed, and then using that old footage in such an inventive way. I actually adore the use of the resurfaced alternative footage from Phantasm as almost like a vision quest state that Mike uses to summon the tall man, trap him in this dream state, this vision quest state. But Coscarelli goes further and intercuts between old footage of the tall man and current footage of Mike to align them visually, so you can see that Mike's path is hewing ever closer to that of the tall man, and it's the intent of the tall man that should be the case. There's a willingness to get the job done, and an invention and a heart and soul to the use of this old material that isn't cynical. It does add to the story very powerfully, and it's that kind of invention despite limitations that made me fall in love with Phantasm in the first place. Let me try and explain it this way. Towards the end of the film, where Mike is dying and is thinking of a time past when he was a boy and he was with Reggie, and Reggie was an ice cream salesman, and it's just footage that wasn't used from the original movie, but it suggests almost an idyllic past, a safe, happy past that possibly never even was, that ends with this ice cream truck driving through an endless night, a pitch black backdrop that's been used throughout all of these films. And I'll tell you what, the reason the outside of the cars is an eternal endless night is because it's got to be so much easier to put blackout curtains around your car so that you can film anytime, anywhere, and you don't have to marry up any of the backgrounds in editing, and it becomes one of the greatest strengths of the movie, because it just generates this feeling of a shrinkingly small circle of friends, Mike, Jody, and Reggie. And whenever they're in a car together, there's this small circle of light and an almost existential nothing beyond that, which is what they're battling. ultimately the notion of death itself, and all of that because it's logistically cheaper and easier to put blackout curtains around a car so that you can marry up different takes and stuff like that, and you don't have to shoot at night, and you don't have to match up the backgrounds and shit like that. This is part of the genius of Phantasm for me. I will say this though, as a movie in its own right, it barely fulfills the brief of being a movie. It's an extra little course for the die-hard fans. It's a really tasty course, but it's a small course. It's an extra little side dish from a meal you liked before, and it ends on such an intangible note that for the longest time, that being the end didn't feel like a proper end, and that's why as many people got excited when part 5 came along. Part 4 feels like a movie in need of a part 5 to help decide whether it's good or it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Now we're going to be talking about Phantasm V Ravager later, and in the comments below that one you can call me a hypocrite for saying that for all the reasons I say I like this movie, I don't like that movie. But before we get to what I think about part 5, let's be honest here. My opinions about part 4, they aren't worth a fart in a whirlwind, because there are so many other opinions out there, and as I am now wont to do, I like to try and give alternate viewpoints at the end of these videos, taken from the reviews from Internet Movie Database reviewers. The first one from author VA76, showing an excellent grasp of maths. VA76 says, I'm a die-hard fan of this series and part 4 is my favourite. It's a lot like the original but manages to surpass it. Angus Scrimm is at his best in this movie. Don't listen to all the negative feedback. Remember, this film was made on a budget of only $650,000. That's less than $1 million. The special effects were very good. Bring on part 5. And to wrap up, channel favourite reviewer Jacob John Taylor 1 gives us his unfiltered thoughts on Phantasm 4. This movie is not scary, so why does it have a cult view up? Why did it get 5.7? This movie is so overrated. The storyline is awful. The ending is awful. This movie is poo. All the Phantasm movie are just poo-poo. Stinky poo-poo. All they are, waste time. They are also waste money. Do not see any of these movies. This movie is poo-poo. Stinky, stinky poo-poo. Plan 9 from Outer Space is better. The Halloween movies are better. A Nightmare on Elm Street movie are better. Friday the 13th, 1980 is a lot better. Good actors wasted their talent being in this awful movie. This movie is not scary. It is just poo-poo. Not scary at all.